Right, continuing with discussion of attitudes. Now I'm going to move on to talking about how we attempt to change attitudes. So we're going to start to talk about persuasion. So persuasion is your term for a deliberate, intentional effort to change an attitude, a belief, or feeling about a particular issue or topic. All right, so we've experienced persuasion at some point. Someone trying to change your attitude about something, like maybe trying to get you to buy a product, maybe convincing you that you should go out on a date with somebody, try this food, things like that, vote for this person. There's all sorts of examples of persuasion you can probably find in your life somewhere. So with persuasion, we also have the related term persuasive communication. Communication aimed at persuasion. So actively attempting to change an attitude or belief by delivering a message that advocates a specific side of an issue through a particular medium, such as speech or an advertisement. And advertisements, they can be radio, TV, online, flyers, things like that. So persuasive communication, this is specifically with the goal of changing people's attitudes, changing people's minds in some way. So sort of your classic example is political speeches or political advertisements trying to get you to vote for somebody or vote for a bill or something like that, an amendment, anything like that where they want you to see a certain side, a certain perspective on something. And one thing that will happen is when you get exposed to persuasive communication, sometimes we get this thing called affect polarization. Now remember, affect, there's the verb to affect things, but there's also affect, which is the noun, meaning like emotions, emotion, mood. All right, so affect polarization. What does polarization mean? Well, polarization means essentially going to extremes. This is where you develop an extreme emotional reaction, like intense like or intense dislike for something. And sometimes this will happen as a result of persuasive communications. Like you might see a political ad, and after seeing it, you're like, I can't stand that person, or I love that person. I really like that person. They seem really good. They seem really awful. The idea with affect polarization, you are going to extremes in your reaction. Another thing that contributes to affect polarization is that many people end up in sort of a media bubble, and there are other terms that might be applied to this sort of situation, but people become encouraged to only hear one side of things. Like like if somebody identifies as conservative versus liberal, to use terminology that we use in the United States when talking about our politics, they will tend to hear more of the viewpoints and hear about the candidates that are considered on the same side as them, and so you don't hear a lot of the conflicting information. And to get people on board with voting in a particular way, for a particular candidate, for example, we will often present the most extreme attention-getting information, and we're going to leave out all the subtle information. We're going to leave out, nuance and things like that. We will focus on what's the worst about the other candidate, what's the best about your candidate. There may very well be exaggeration in the information that's presented, and so these are some of the things that contribute to this polarization, this affect polarization. Now, another thing that I'm going to talk about relevant to persuasion is this idea that there are two routes or roots to persuasion. I know depending on what part of the country you're from, some people pronounce it route, some people pronounce it root. So I'm probably going to say root, all right, but it's your path. Two paths to persuasion. So in the next video, I'm going to talk about the elaboration likelihood model.